So let's take on two news stories. First, there's some new reporting about Donald Trump's robust involvement in the conspiracy to corruptly overturn the election's results. And two, now that Steve Bannon is being criminally prosecuted for contempt of Congress, it appears that Mark Meadows is changing his tune, and he's now cooperating with the House committee investigating the January 6th attack. But that raises the question, does Mark Meadows get backsies on the crime he committed when he refused to appear on his congressional subpoena? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So let's take on two stories today. First, there's some new reporting that reveals even more of Donald Trump's robust participation in a conspiracy to overturn the election results. Here's the reporting today by The Guardian. Trump called aides hours before Capitol riot to discuss how to stop Biden victory. And that article begins, hours before the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol this year, Donald Trump made several calls from the White House to top lieutenants at the Willard Hotel in Washington and talked about ways to stop the certification of Joe Biden's election win from taking place on January 6. The former president first told the lieutenants his vice president, Mike Pence, was reluctant to go along with the plan to commandeer his largely ceremonial role at the joint session of Congress in a way that would allow Trump to retain the presidency for a second term. But as Trump relayed to them the situation with Pence, he pressed his lieutenants about how to stop Biden's certification from taking place on 6 January. He pressed his lieutenants. How do we stop Biden's certification? Donald Trump is not just a participant in this robust conspiracy to overthrow our democracy. He was the leader of it. He was the kingpin. He was the big fish. He was the mob boss. And remember, Donald Trump did these things after he was told by his own Attorney General, Bill Barr, sort of minor prince of corruption himself. Bill Barr told him there is no fraud undermining the election's results. Donald Trump did all of this after he knew that. And Donald Trump did all of this after he met with his DOJ officials and said, I know there was no fraud. Just say there was and leave the rest to me and my allies in Congress, and apparently my lieutenants at the Willard Hotel War Council meeting. And friends, this is additional evidence that shows why Donald Trump can be indicted, should be indicted, must be indicted, and I believe to my core will be indicted. Now, let's turn to Mark Meadows. Here's today's reporting by the New York Times. Headline, Mark Meadows agrees to cooperate in Capitol attack investigation. And that article begins, Mark Meadows, the former White House chief of staff under President Donald Trump, has reached an agreement with the House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol to provide documents and sit for a deposition, the panel said on Tuesday, a stunning reversal for a crucial witness in the inquiry. So I have two observations about this development. Mark Meadows having a change of heart. First, apparently prosecuting Steve Bannon for his crime of contempt of Congress has had a ripple effect. Maybe Mark Meadows has said to himself, let's see, Steve Bannon has been criminally indicted on 2 counts of contempt of Congress. He will be convicted because he has no viable defense, and the statutes have mandatory minimum prison terms, so Steve Bannon will end up in prison. I'd rather not go that way, and perhaps that is why Mark Meadows had a change of heart. That's a good thing. Anything that inspires people to actually comply with lawful congressional subpoenas is a good thing. But here's the second observation. Mark Meadows has already committed the crime of contempt of Congress a few weeks ago when he just thumbed his nose at the subpoena and refused to appear. Crime complete. So the question becomes, does Mark Meadows get backsies? If it were you, if it were me, and we just blew off a congressional subpoena and waltzed in a few weeks later and said, yeah, I think we're ready now, would we get backsies? No, we'd be prosecuted. And we would still be compelled to testify, required to testify. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens to Mark Meadows now that on his own timetable he's decided to go ahead and comply with that subpoena, even though the crime is complete. We'll have to see if we are witness to the continued erosion of the rule of law or if there will be some consequences for Mark Meadows. There should be, because, justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.